Well, it's a nice and chilly Wednesday morning. Welcome to PrepperCon Radio.
My goodness, I'm not enjoying this cold weather.
It is chilly. It is not fun. I'm a realtor. One of my clients texted this morning at 7:15. My furnace is out. What do I do? And it was kind of funny because I'm like, well, if you're like me, you've got some space heaters, you've got some other options to keep you warm until you get your furnace fixed. But my first initial thought for her was, because I sold her the home, I was like, well, you've got this really nice gas fireplace. Is your gas on? She's like, yeah. I'm like, turn it on. Crank it up, put the blower on high, let it warm up the whole basement. You know, heat rises, it'll warm up the upstairs, but just hang out in the basement while you can until you get your furnace fixed. And I'm like,
that's an absolutely great point. It's just something that I think a lot of us don't think about is, what if the furnace goes out? What do you have to, heat a single room at an absolute minimum? Have a space heater, electric space heater, something like that, to heat a single room, or gas fireplace, wood burning fireplace. The more options you have in the way of heating your home, as with any method of preparation, whatever you're preparing for, the more redundancy you have, the more duplicity you have, the better.
Duplicity sounds like a bad word. Are you?
I love that show. That's
duplicitous.
Such a good show.
So, yeah, you need to have an alternative solution. And in talking about alternative solutions, I'm a big proponent of concealed carry.
I am too.
I love it. I think everyone should be doing it. We've got a guest today, Ben Hansen, SciFi's Fact or Fake. What a lot of people don't realize is he's a former FBI agent. So he's going to be on with us in just a little bit. Excited to have him here. He's going to talk about kind of stand your ground, concealed carry rules, regulations, what you can and can't do in the state of Utah.
And he's an instructor as well, correct? He's
an instructor, so he does Hansen firearms instruction. When we get him on, we'll have him talk about that a little bit. But the other nice thing is we'll talk about this as well, training for situations where you're in danger but you don't have time to draw your gun. You're unable to, it's not wise to. You and I both had the opportunity last week to go to special training with Stan Pruitt. He runs Urban Survivors out of Ogden. It's Hapkido and Filipino knife fighting techniques.
It's kind of his own custom blend of different martial arts. Apparently he's a black belt in 6 different disciplines, and we learned a bunch.
Well, it was phenomenal, just the knowledge that he brought. My wife came and she had fun throwing me on the ground. She had fun punching me and kicking me, and I mean, how's that not fun for a wife to beat up on a husband a little bit and have it be completely okay? It was a lot of fun, and since then, we've purchased, rubber guns to practice the same techniques that we've learned in that class, because it was phenomenal.
It was quite eye-opening, and I knew I wouldn't say most everything, but a lot of the things that Stan taught us, I had a basic knowledge of, just saying, okay, I understand that if someone is good with a knife and you're trying to draw your weapon on them within 21 feet, 28 feet, I think is what Stan advises, don't pull your weapon, because you're not going to be able to, because he can get to you faster than you can pull your gun.
Yeah, just the sheer issue of pulling it, acquiring your target, targeting, and firing. They're fast enough they can get to you, and they could take your gun away from you if they know what they're doing.
Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense to be very well-rounded, not just a good gunfighter per se. Know the different martial arts, different ways to defend yourself, both in with knives or with martial art of some kind.
Absolutely. So for those of you that are just tuning in, this is PrepperCon Radio at AM 630. That's K-Talk Radio. We want to thank K-Talk for letting us be here, letting us have this show. We're excited to bring on our guest. His name is Ben Hansen. He's a former FBI agent. Let's actually just bring him on the line and have him introduce himself. Hey, Ben, good morning.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
Good. Hey, thanks for being with us today.
My hands are still cold, but starting to warm up. I know how you love the cold weather up here, Ben.
Yeah, I'm down here in Southern California, and every time that we get rain, I think of you guys because it turns to snow.
How's the water levels down there? I know you guys were sandbagging last week.
We were. We activated our CERT team down here for about 2.5, 3 days. We were sandbagging, and we just can't handle the water because there's no way to actually store it here. They haven't built dams in 40 years, I think, and so although we got a lot of water, it goes right to the ocean, and then they complain about the drought again.
Oh man. So they had no solutions to hold on to any of that water.
No, they've done that themselves, really.
Wow.
You know, it goes into the aqueducts and goes right
here
out
in
in the
Utah,
ocean.
every city, every county required you to deal with the stormwater in detention basins, where it then was allowed to sit and percolate into the ground, and then it's used in wells and groundwater. So we're a little, well, we are the second driest state in the entire nation. So
Yeah, we have to be a
kinda
little more prepared that way.
Would that be next to California?
Well, that's true.
Right now, yeah.
Currently, right?
We're probably third. So,
Yep.
so give us a little background for the listeners. Tell us a little bit about how you got into firearms training and instruction. I know you were in the FBI, but give us a little brief history for us.
Yeah, well, I've been formally instructing for about the past 5 years. I was, grew up like a lot of people in Utah with guns, and it was interesting because it was my mom who taught me how to shoot. Dad was into sports, coaching baseball, basketball, but it was Mom who took us kids out with Grandpa to hunt and fish, and she taught me how to hold a gun and shoot a gun, and it wasn't until later that Mom helped us sneak a gun into the house.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Dad-
interesting.
Dad
I did not know
was
that
against it.
story. What
Yeah,
kind of gun was this? Is it 22 or what?
Yep, 22. Went to a local gun show, and Grandpa helped me buy it, and Mom decided she felt safer with us having a gun in the house, and Dad was not happy when he found out that we were keeping it there. But, like I tell my students, don't give up on people who seem to be very against them, because over time, it starts with curiosity, then usually, there'll be some incidents and things in the news, things that hit close to home, and people start thinking about safety. Then the barriers start coming down about this fear, which is quite unreasonable. As if the gun, gets up on its own during the night and goes on a shooting spree. And once they become familiar and understand that a gun is just a tool, you really start having a conversation to the point where, I taught my own father the CCW class, and he has his permit now. So people do change.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a great story that way as well. A very dear, close friend of mine, and I won't go any further description of that. Basically texted me the other day, hey, we've been seeing the things that have been going on in the news lately, and I'm thinking maybe I should get a handgun. And of course, under my breath and in my head, I'm just kind of cheering and saying, I'd be happy to help you choose the right firearm and give you some basic training and get you started. So you're absolutely right.
And you'll be the guy that they come to, the person they think of, because it may have been a topic they didn't want to bring up at first, but once crazy things start happening, they start looking into it. So that's how I got into it. I worked through college. I was at the University of Utah and worked through college, sometimes doing security and armed security. Finally, went to work for the state of Utah investigating child sex crimes, and then for the FBI. So, when I left, I really did feel as if this was a skill that I love informing people about, because it's, of course, our Second Amendment protects the right, but not many people use it and take advantage of, I guess, the responsibilities, everything that comes with it. It's just kind of tossed aside, and we think it's always going to be there when we need it. So my goal was to help people get familiar with guns, to help them overcome fear, and to get more people out there responsibly carrying. So that's what I've been doing for one of my past businesses in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's an absolute key there is overcoming the fear, because a lot of people just don't understand, don't have a proper understanding, and are scared of even a gun being in a room.
What's funny is I grew up in a household, kind of like Ben, guns weren't there. We got a BB gun when I was like 12, and I was like, awesome! And the only reason we got it was my uncle. He'd put this little scope on a BB gun and was playing around with it for years, and was like, I'm tired of it, I'm going to get rid of it. And he gave it to me, and I'm like, sweet! And immediately my dad confiscates it and is like, well, you shouldn't have a firearm, I should have it. I'm like, it's not a firearm, it's a BB gun. A BB gun is air. And he goes, same thing, you'll shoot your eye out or something. And so he confiscated it, but he would let me shoot it with him there. I'm like, yeah, it's a BB gun, but that was the extent of any, besides like, we had a bow and arrow, anything, that was the extent of anything that was allowed in the house. I couldn't talk about guns, about getting a gun, wanting a gun. The rule was no guns in our house.
And I had the exact opposite experience, whereas my dad would take us out shooting, even as young kids, and his guns would essentially sit in his closet, which I know I don't necessarily advocate right now. And I remember as a kid going in and pulling those guns out and looking at them, but knowing not to pull the trigger, not to point it in a safe direction, those basic things, and that really gave me a lot of confidence.
Well, and for me, like fast forward to now, 30 plus, almost 30 years, just shy of 30 years. Now I've got my firearms. My wife is completely in support of it as long as we continue training. And my parents just started asking questions about what do they need. They've changed. That shift has happened for them. And I've seen that happen for a lot of people. And I like that, Ben, I like that you're taking an active role in helping educate people. I try to educate people. That's why we have this radio show. Shane and I are here trying to educate people, bring in the experts to talk to them about it. Because as much as Shane and I know, and as much as you listeners know, there's always someone that knows better. That's one of the things we learn in life. Philosophically, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. Mm-hmm. And so this is a great opportunity for that. So let's talk. We've got about 2.5 minutes before the break. Let's talk, kind of give us an overview of what we want to talk about today. I know we want to talk about when you can actually defend yourself with a firearm, kind of the stand your ground and Utah laws. Were there any unique things that you wanted to talk to us about today that we can get the listeners involved in?
Yeah, we can get into a lot of stuff, and for listeners, if they want to call in and ask specific questions, I preface all this that I'm not an attorney, but being a Utah instructor, I also teach the California, Orange County, and Ventura classes for the California concealed permits, which are like rare gold here in California, but it depends on the county you live in. You can still get a permit, which is great. So I'm not an attorney, however, we can go over some scenario questions, and the answer usually is always, well, that depends. Mm-hmm. So you can give me a scenario, we can discuss it, the implications. This is what my students really seem to love. So we'll talk about your rights as Utah law outside of the home when you're carrying a concealed weapon, and then also inside the home. We have a category of laws commonly referred to as the castle doctrine. Mm-hmm. So when you're in your home or your castle, you have enhanced rights. There's not as many requirements.
There are also specific laws for when you're in your vehicle, correct?
Yes, there are. In Utah, as you'll see as we talk about some of these laws, a good CCW instructor should be covering all of this with you. And some of the things that Utah has done to protect their citizens is make really good laws. You guys are very lucky there in Utah, and when I've lived there, because if things really start to hit the fan, as we'll see, remind me so we get to it later, Utah has put in place some laws that defend your gun rights, and compared to the rest of the country, if you start complaining about what Utah has in place, we'll take a look at what's going on in the rest of the country.
Awesome. Well, we're running into a break. For those listening, pick us up after the break. Call in 801-254-5855. You're listening to PrepperCon Radio on K-Talk. That's k-talk.com. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to K-Talk Radio. Before we jump back in with our guest today, I've got a really cool little flyer sitting here in front of me. The Utah Eagle Forum is happening this weekend. That's this weekend, Saturday, January 16th. Starts at 8:30 a.m., goes to 6 p.m., and the lineup of speakers is awesome. I mean, we've got Senator Mike Lee, so if you want to go give him a piece of your mind, kind of hear what he has to say, feel free. Tim Ballard, founder of Operation Underground Railroad. You've heard us talk about Operation Underground Railroad, Our Rescue. We talk about him a lot. We love that group. He'll be there. He'll be talking about one of his books, The Lincoln Hypothesis. Big historian, former CIA agent, former Homeland Security agent, just a really cool guy. Governor Gary Herbert's going to be there. We've got Wendy Hart from the Alpine School Board, Utah State Senator Margaret Dayton, Congresswoman Mia Love. I mean, it's just jam-packed full of amazing speakers. It's only $39 for the day, and you get lunch included. So really, after a $10 lunch from Neater's Bakery, you're paying $29 to hear all these amazing speakers. Really informative. Go to utaheagleforum.org to get your tickets. Or you can email utaheagleforum@gmail.com or call 801-756-8077. So coming back into our topic, this is PrepperCon Radio. Our format is Prepare, Protect, Survive, and Thrive. Today is our Protection Day, and we have got Ben Hansen from Hansen Firearms Training. Ben, awesome guy. We've been talking a little bit of intro before, but let's just jump into it. Let's talk about what I can and can't do once I've got my concealed carry license. What are the rules as far as like brandishing your weapon, like drawing my weapon just to get someone to stop doing what they're doing? Is that even an option, or is that legal?
It is. How about we first talk about use of deadly force, and then I can get into brandishing.
Okay, fine.
So this applies whether you have a concealed permit or not. Okay, so as you may know, Utah also has an open carry statute, which means that even if you don't have a permit, you may carry a firearm exposed, meaning visible, on your hip, without a permit, as long as it's statutorily unloaded. And this goes for most public places. So that means...
Is there an age requirement on that?
Yes. You actually kind of got me there, and one of your callers are probably...
I think it's
21. It's 18 when you're in your car, and I believe it may be 21. I can find out for
handgun in particular, maybe not a rifle, but...
we've got a listener calling in. He may have the answer to that. Let's bring him on.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for calling. You're on K-Talk. You're on the air. What's your name?
It's Elaine. I got something to say.
Awesome.
The only belt that you need in any form of martial arts is belt, that's it. Any degree of belt that you have, all the rest is show. All those belts that you get are show. The only belt I put on in the morning, and my style I learned in Malaysia when it's a Kettleweight martial arts is I put my belt on, that's it. And I have no rules. There is no rules in my world. You attack me, you're going to get hurt.
That's a great point. I like that you bring that up, and thanks for calling in. A lot of people will brag about their belts, especially if they're younger kids. I mean, I remember in high school, everyone's like, "Oh, I'm a black belt," blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, I have a leather belt around my pants to hold them up. Whoop-de-doo, Reality is you don't know who you're going up against, so you need to have, I think, personally, training, and really in the situation of a fight, there are really no rules. If someone's attacking you, you defend yourself however you can,
as fiercely as you can.
So I think that's a great point to bring up. There are no rules when you're being attacked.
Well,
in a physical fight, as soon as you start drawing weapons, then there are rules, right?
Right, and I would add to that the amount of force that you use. There's force rules, and that kind of falls right into what we're going to talk about now with using deadly force. So within Utah, okay, you can only use deadly force if it's necessary and you feel that there's imminent danger of you or a third person coming up against a threat that would be likely to cause death or serious bodily injury, or for you to prevent the commission of what Utah calls a forcible felony. So it's a three-pronged test. If you have one of these things, the threat is either going to cause death, serious bodily injury, or it's the commission of a forcible felony. You may be able to articulate using deadly force. Now, breaking that apart really quick, death is obvious. Okay, so if this person is going to use a weapon or some other means to cause death, that a reasonable person in your shoes would come to the same conclusion you could articulate using deadly force. Serious bodily injury. Now this means anything that causes, creates or causes a serious permanent disfigurement, a protracted loss or impairment of any body member or organ, any functions of the body, or creates a substantial risk of death. And what I tell my students is, think of anything that might send you to the hospital in an ambulance. That's kind of a general kind of rule of thumb. So we threw out a couple ideas, okay? A guy with a bottle. Okay? He's broken off a bottle and he's coming at you. Could that cause serious bodily injury? Yeah.
Okay, here's one. What if someone's running at me with a spoon? Now, it doesn't sound bad, but in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, he wanted to cut the guy's heart out with a spoon.
Because it'll hurt more.
Because it'll hurt more. Would that be enough?
What the judge or jury will look at is a number of factors. They're going to look at the capability of that person to carry out the threat. Is this a 4-year-old with a spoon, right? Mm-hmm. They'll look at the distance of the attacker from you. Are they, 30 feet, 40 feet across the street saying, I'm going to hit you with a spoon? What is their size, their physical ability? So they're going to look at a variety of different things. The bottom line is, though, you could justify in some situations even an unarmed attacker. So I always use the example of you're in a convenience store. Okay? You're getting your Slurpee at 7-Eleven. Guy comes in. You're with your wife and kids. I weigh about 220 pounds. So somebody to be a physical threat of death or serious injury to me, I think I could handle maybe most people my size. What if someone comes in who's 320 pounds? And this individual gets in my face, either says that he wants my money or, starts pushing me around for whatever reason. Now, this can't be to protect against a fight or quarrel. You clearly have to be the victim, okay, in defense. Now, if this person gets me on the ground and is pinning me to the ground and is pounding me in my face, remember, as you're carrying a concealed weapon, every conflict that you get into is an armed conflict. Mm-hmm. So if this person were able to incapacitate me and or discover that my gun is on my belt, if he finds that, I have to assume that if he's pounding in my face, he's also going to try and take my gun or use it.
And I think one thing that our listeners need to realize as well is that there are many, many instances in which a single punch has killed someone.
Yeah, definitely.
Not just knock them out, but actually kill them with a single punch.
Now, this is where we get into what I call the kind of gray areas. They're not clear cut. However, there's been many cases on both sides of that where a person has been deemed justified and others not. So the reasonable person has to take all these things into account. So your question with a spoon, definitely, if the person is capable enough, maybe they're a world champion spoon thrower, you could use that weapon to jab it in someone's eye, into their throat. This would cause serious bodily injury, but it all depends. Now, the third prong to this test, like I said, is death, serious bodily injury, or commission of what's called a forcible felony. Now, the forcible felonies in Utah are a category of felonies that have been deemed so grievous and so dangerous that they've decided that deadly force can be used in the prevention of one of these. So there is a big long list. I'll just read a couple of them really quick. Of course, you have your murder, manslaughter, kidnapping, rape, forcible sodomy, object rape, sexual abuse. Now, in those, I would add that it's not just inappropriate touching. Okay, so if you're in the grocery store and someone comes up and you're a female and they touch you inappropriately and run away, that in itself doesn't justify you to take out your gun and shoot them. It would be your more serious, let's say they've pushed you against a wall and you fear that they're going to commit a greater sexual offense.
Right. And I think maybe this is the kind of the perfect point to say, you know, I know we're mostly talking about guns and gun laws today, but this might be the time when we should emphasize we need other training. You need to get some kind of a martial arts or a knife fighting type of training to where you don't have to pull out your gun. Don't have your gun be your only line of defense.
Well, I like that. The big thing is try to avoid the scenario, first of all.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're walking to a gas station in an area that you don't really feel comfortable in the first place, maybe you should just get back in your car and go to the next gas station. You know, drive further down the road. Avoid situations first. And if you can de-escalate it first, you know, so for those listening, what Ben's talking about, what we're talking about here is when you can no longer avoid a scenario and you're stuck in it, this is what you're allowed to do. I want to point that out.
And you guys pointed that out at the top of the show as well, and what's known as the 21-foot rule, or it's devised actually by a sergeant in Utah, Dennis Tuller. And the Tuller drill is a rule of thumb they use now in court as an objective standard even, to say, okay, that person with that contact weapon, or in some cases open-handed, they can arrive at your position where you're at within 1.5 seconds, which is the average amount of time it takes an officer actually to draw a gun and fire 1 or 2 shots. And so that is a very close distance. And in fact, most robberies, assaults, everything are initiated within less than 10 feet. So I always tell my students, half of the gunfight doesn't involve the gun at all. You need to do something to create that distance, to give you time. So if you're in that convenience store, you're getting your, I love Slurpees, that's what I do. The guy comes in, he's holding the place up, or he comes up to you and holds a knife up. In general, your best option is not to draw your gun directly at that point. You have to create distance.
That's a great point.
That would be hiding behind something, pushing something in the way. You know, maybe it's a shopping cart. Maybe it's, you know, throwing over a display case.
And if you've got an open, clear area, there's no reason you can't just run away, right? Let's take another caller real quick. Hey, you're on K-Talk. What's your name?
This is Randy.
Randy, thanks for calling in. What's your comment?
I had to defend myself one time, and I worried about it for a long time that I was going to get repercussions, but nothing ever came out of it. I had some gang members living next door to me, and they had people coming and going. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning one time, and I talked to the police earlier about these guys coming down with their loud music, the thumping deep bass that would rattle your windows, and they said, well, get their license, you know. So it was 3 o'clock in the morning one night, and they came, and I went out and got just far enough away to write down their license plate number, but they jumped out of the car and come over and started wailing on me, and I had the gun in my pocket, and I pulled it on them. I just backed up. You know, they go, oh, a gun. So you want a gunfight? So I'm thinking, maybe they got one, you know. So I started backing up and went in and called 911 and just waited, you know.
So yeah, that's where where the brandishing a firearm comes into play, and that's a perfect way to segment into that.
Well, I do like Randy, the fact that you backed away, you created distance, and I think that's one of the things Ben's talking about is the importance of creating distance. Because if you were to pull your gun while they're on top of you or in the direct scuffle, if you can't get away to pull it, that gun becomes their gun too. Now the fact that you were able to get up and get away, and then use that as your defensive tool to get away, I just think that's awesome.
Rather than just instinctively pulling the trigger.
The police in fact, the police told me at the time, we've been watching these guys, and we advise you to continue carrying that weapon, because they may seek some retribution.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks
Well, thanks so much for your
then,
call.
well,
Great
let me
story.
finish here, but
Yeah.
in the state of Utah here, I could have, when the police advised me to carry that, I was allowed to carry that anywhere except the church.
Mm-hmm.
And the church would not bend on the issue.
Yep. We're actually running into a break right now. So we'll talk about the church issue when we get back. But thanks for calling in. Hey, you guys are listening to K-Talk Radio. That's AM 630. You can find us at Facebook. Simply just K-Talk Media. Twitter, K-Talk, KTKK. And we'll be right back after some words from our sponsors. All right, we're back at PrepperCon Radio. Thanks for tuning in today with K-Talk Radio. The phone number to call in is 801-254-5855. And we've got the fantastic, marvelous, gun-toting, gunslinging, well, I shouldn't say gunslinging. I don't know, maybe he is a gunslinger. VIP guest calling in, and that's our very own Ben Hansen. Let's pick up kind of where we left off with
Sure.
when you can draw and when you can use your
brandish
using force.
weapon.
Yeah, I guess we just transition to brandishing.
Randy, the last caller, made a great comment. So he told us about his story of, having some people playing loud music, seemed to be kind of gang members. He was going out to get their license plate number and felt threatened. So we just finished talking about use of deadly force. Now, to answer the question about when can you brandish, well, in Utah, it's really kind of cool because let's say you have your permit. Oh, and by the way, I found out the answer to the other question. For open carry, as long as it's statutorily unloaded, it's 18 and over. If you're 21, then you can get the permit, and only if you have the permit can you carry fully loaded in open carry. So,
Okay, cool.
anyway, so let's say you have your gun. You need to remember that every conflict you get into is an armed conflict. So the good thing is, though, let's say you go to the store and you're reaching up on the shelf, your shirt comes up and your gun's exposed.
Mm-hmm.
That is not illegal in Utah. Now it is. It's not illegal in California either. However, in California, if one of my students or I do that, and it causes a public alarm, they will take your permit away,
Wow.
depending on the county you're in. In Utah, it doesn't matter if your gun is visible or not. If it becomes visible, as long as you don't make any additional threatening behavior, you're okay. All right? Now, as far as the threat, as soon as you start making threats, if you are justified in believing that the other actor or person is going to use unlawful force, and you're not doing something, let's say, like committing a crime, or you didn't start a fight or a quarrel with them, you're clearly the victim here. If you believe it is necessary to prevent what you believe is unlawful force by the other person, you may inform them that you have a gun, you may display the gun, you may draw the gun.
That's a good point.
Now,
I think I wanted to bring up real quick is, like you mentioned, you cannot be the aggressor. Once you're the aggressor, you say you start the fight, and you end up defending yourself, you are still the aggressor. Am I right, Ben?
It's a sticky situation. Utah law, what it says is that you must then effectively communicate your withdrawal, your intention to withdraw from the fight.
Okay,
So,
right.
I mean, then we get to that situation kind of like, who knows what really happened in the Trayvon Martin case.
Right.
If you pull a gun, their defense could be, I thought he was going to use it on me in this fight, and so then that's why I attacked him, and then that's why you shot. So very sticky. You have to have witnesses. Anytime you introduce a gun into the conversation, be aware that the other person might be calling your bluff. So in Randy's case, if you have this disparity of force, let's say, okay, let's take the example of I've got a 15-year-old, okay, who's making threats. Well, I feel that open-handed I could take on most 15-year-olds, but could you take on 5? Could you take on 5 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds? If you have this disparity of force and they surround you and are threatening physical harm, So I lift up my shirt, place my hand on my gun, and tell them to back away. Once you've done that, you must be committed to use it if they escalate the force.
I think that's a good
Otherwise-
point, is the communication. I think a lot of people forget the communication point. Let them know your intentions as loud as you possibly can. And that's something that you reinforced when I took your handgun training class, but also Stan reinforced from Urban Survivors last week. Like, he actually scared us how loud he communicated and how forcefully he communicated. We weren't ready for it, and all of a sudden he's yelling, "Get on the ground, do it now, do it now." And you're just like, oh man, okay. I'd get on the ground if he were yelling at me like that, and wow, it was really intense. So I think if you can raise your intensity in your voice, to let them know your intentions, that
It's not the
can,
time to be timid.
yeah, that can save you from actually having to fully withdraw your weapon and take aim.
Absolutely, and I think maybe we should transition. We still want to talk about castle doctrine and stand your ground in Utah.
Yeah, we've
And
only got
we're
10 minutes left,
coming
so
short
let's-
on time here. So
Let's jump into castle doctrine real quick.
Sure. Okay. So now we're moving this confrontation inside your home, which I said most states have some sort of a category of laws they call castle doctrine. So I have enhanced rights when I'm in my home. Now, this was written kind of with old language in the late 1800s, and it's funny because California is very similar. If you are in your home, say your habitation, or this could be your temporary habitation, it could be a hotel, motel, wherever you're at for the night, if you reasonably believe that force is necessary to prevent or terminate unlawful entry or attack on the habitation, you may use deadly force only if the entry is made or attempted in a violent, tumultuous manner, surreptitiously or by stealth, which is really kind of the same thing. And you believe the entry is made for the purpose of assaulting, or as the law reads, offering violence. I offer you some violence.
great, thanks.
The second prong to that is...
Would you like fries with that? Thanks, Shane.
Or if you believe the entry is made or attempted for the purpose of committing a felony in the habitation and that you need to use force. So, two things. The way they come in, if they come into your house violently, okay, they break down a door, they break a window, kick in a door, or quietly, surreptitiously. So they sneak in with a credit card, the door's open, they
Right.
sneak through a window.
And like us realtors, as we walk into a house, regardless if no one's supposed to be there, we're always announcing our presence. A realtor coming through, just to make sure that we're not startling any maybe squatters or anyone like that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, that would be the purpose of it. So if you think that person who surprised you or busted in is there to offer violence, commit violence against the person, you could be justified. Or if there's no violence, but you suddenly come down to your kitchen to make a sandwich in the night and there's somebody in your home. Now, depending the circumstance, it's 2 a.m., you're not expecting visitors. If you believe they're there to commit a felony, and I should add, it's not just any felony, it's really kind of those forcible felonies. Robbery, burglary, kidnapping. If it's any of these forcible felonies, you are justified without sitting down and having a chat with this person.
Right. I think that that's something really to consider beforehand as well. Is okay, are you able to scare them off without pulling the trigger? Because you don't want to have to live with that kind of decision. Is it truly necessary to? Sure, it might be legal, but do you really want to do that?
And we go through those scenarios with our students because it pays to think about things that could happen well before they do. So what I suggest is that people who are in your homes and you're running through these little drills, take a training gun is the best way, which, plastic inert training gun, even a water gun. Or you have to make sure that you double, triple check and clear your own weapon if you do this with a live weapon. And you test your spouse, you test everyone, and you run through these drills because within your home, you have to think, several things, including if that person comes to the door, what kind of angles am I dealing with here? If I were to engage as they come through the door and miss, is that bullet going to go sailing through into another room where I've got children or my spouse? Where are my areas of cover? Into the neighbors? Where can I retreat to for cover? Where do I have my guns perhaps staged around the house to get to them if I need to? So, this is part of the plan. It's part of being a prepper, is thinking about those areas that you frequent in life, whether you're at home, whether you're in your car, in the way that you carry your gun, or you might work in a business and you're a cashier at the counter. You have a lot of time, so you kind of let yourself daydream and work out these scenarios so that if the time ever comes, there's no time for thinking. There's just not.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great point. You have to practice these scenarios. You have to get into that. You have to, stand your ground when you need to. All these different things you have to brush up on and understand and know. And it's, Ben, you mentioned, if you're a prepper, these are things you need to be doing. I would go even further. If you're a responsible citizen, you need to know all these things. It is definitely time in everyone's lives to get a little bit more prepared, to get better situated, to know what the laws are, what you can and can't do, to know what you can do, and have a plan for the scenarios that can affect you in your life. One of the major concerns I hear a lot is active shooter situations at work. And Ben, you brought up a good point. If you're at work, know what your exits are, know what your strategies are. Try to understand and know what you can do and how you can get out of that situation alive. These are great things. Today's topic.
Excellent point.
Oh, go ahead.
I would just throw in there the active shooter subject has been very hot, especially down here after San Bernardino and here in California. What we teach people, and what I've always told my students, is if I have given you a class and you've been in my class and I see you on the street, I'm going to ask if you have your gun on you. And if you don't, I want to know why. Your gun does you no good at home. It really doesn't. And every place you could legally carry, I want my students carrying. Utah has defended the right for you to carry in so many places that other states are not allowed. I promised I would just quickly touch. I know we got a minute or two.
Yeah.
There is a law that Utah has created that in a disaster and emergency, the government cannot take away guns that you can legally own. So they protect your rights. You should be happy that you're living in such a great state.
Awesome. We are out of time. Thank you so much for being on with us, Ben. We love your knowledge and your expertise, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben. Good to talk to you again.
Love to be back. Thanks, guys.
All right, listeners, thanks for being here today. Tune in next week. We're going to be talking about survival, and we've got an awesome guest.